Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Hit the bell, subscribe. We have new content coming out daily. Make sure you subscribe. God bless you guys. Very special guest joins us now, the legendary Candace Owens. Candace, welcome to the program. We are here to talk about a new project of yours that is very, very exciting. Convicting a Criminal, which is a response to this Netflix series, Making a Murderer. We have a trailer, but first, Candace, welcome to the program. Tell us all about it.
Hey, good to be back. Yeah, I'm really excited about this, Convicting a Murderer, which is really an answer or reflection, rather, on Netflix's Making a Murderer, which was a cult phenomenon at the time that it was released in 2015, telling the story of Stephen Avery. And if you walked away having binged that series, it was about this poor guy who was wrongly convicted and held in prison for 12 years, which is accurate, by the way. He was actually held in prison for 12 years for something that he didn't do. Which was the sexual assault and attempted murder of a young woman. And at no fault of the police, the woman survived the attack and pointed him out in a lineup. And so this was pre-DNA. They locked this guy up for 12 years. DNA technology gets better, forensics gets better, and they actually realize that they've got the wrong guy in prison. They release him. He's out for 2 years, and suddenly he's under suspicion and arrested for the disappearance and eventually the murder of another woman named Teresa Hallback. And so it was an interesting storyline, and people were gripped by the plot. And it was very much became White Lives Matter, in that people were outraged, believed that this man was innocent, that they were framing him for the murder of Teresa Hallback because of a pending lawsuit. It created tribalism online. Celebrities weighed in. Trevor Noah, Chrissy Teigen, all the usual suspects claiming that this guy, Stephen Avery, had been wrongly convicted, and that this was a case of bad cops, rotten cops. And so it just turns out really that Netflix left out a lot of very important details, and it becomes really fun to dive into true crime, especially because I'm a woman. Women love true crime, but also because it still speaks to the political nature. I don't know why we implicitly trust documentaries and celebrities to tell us the truth. We shouldn't by now. But it really gets into really our mentality with propaganda, and Netflix is always a willing participant in sharing propaganda.
There's so many important aspects to this. I want to make sure everyone knows how to watch your response. Convicting a Murderer, you guys, if you have a Daily Wire membership, you could do that, unveils the shocking truth behind one of the most controversial criminal cases in recent history. Let's play the trailer. It's really beautifully put together. Play cut 47.
1021 and 24 Main Street. Do we have Stephen Avery in custody?
Netflix made millions of dollars from Making a Murderer, but the filmmakers left out very important details, mountains of evidence that you have not yet seen. The blood vial,
the most egregious manipulation from the movie.
interrogations,
That's when he started beating me, because I told him that he's sick.
cell phones,
And I saw melted plastic parts of a cell phone.
interviews.
Her arms were pinned behind her
They
head.
made Stephen Avery look like a victim.
You believe your brother's guilty?
I don't know if I'm a suspect. I got nothing to hide.
I'm getting sick and tired of media deception.
Evidence piling up.
Why would they omit so many different things?
Why are you editing my testimony?
I am not going to make the same mistake that the filmmakers did.
Rearranging the testimony.
They delete a portion of it at the end.
How could they claim to care about the truth?
They all know that Stephen Avery committed this crime.
911, what is your emergency?
The evidence forces me to conclude that you are the most dangerous individual ever to set foot in this courtroom.
That is not what you would learn if you just watch Netflix. Good for you, Candace, for responding to this. I have a question, Candace. In our audience chat and also from our feedback and just from kind of anecdotes, the true crime genre seems to be overwhelmingly consumed by women. Why is that? Men don't seem as interested in this. I'm just curious, why do you think that is?
It's really actually interesting because I was doing Lauren Chen's podcast, or no, rather, she was jumping on an X Space with us, and she said the same thing. It's really dominated by women. We love IDTV. We love watching a criminal mystery. And I don't know what that is. It might just be women's intuition. We're maybe fascinated by the idea that somebody can trick someone, you know, and trying to lean into, I think we're really fascinated by psychology and things of that nature, but there definitely is some sort of a biological proclivity that women have to these sort of true crime mysteries that men don't have, which is fascinating to look at. But this particular case, actually, men were very invested in this as well. And I think it might have just been because of what was going on culturally at the time. I mean, they dropped this docuseries back in 2015. BLM was just starting to get its footing in America. There was this rise of anti-police sentiment. And of course, it was seized upon by the mainstream media, not because they cared about this young woman who was horrifically murdered, by the way. Teresa Hallback was, you know, raped by 2 men. She was shot. She was stabbed. She was set on fire in a burn pit and cut into 1 million pieces. That's literally how this young woman died at 22 years old. And the documentary makers didn't care. You had these 2 lesbian documentary makers who were catching sort of a political wave of anti-police sentiment, who wanted to essentially make a profit and perhaps suggest, which they heavily suggested, that this man could potentially be innocent, which we revealed their prison phone calls, which we got a hold of, where they were clear about their intentions, that they believed that he was innocent and were willing to steamroll over Teresa's body, her family, and the grief that they were going through. But yeah, it is really a psychological phenomenon, and you are accurate that women tend to lean more into this category. But the answer to that, I don't know. I'm just kind of amused by it.
Yeah, I have a couple theories. The one that I would say is that men are more interested in macro, talking about the stock market, politics, philosophy. There's a lot of very personal elements to true crime, right? That it could be in your neighborhood, in your home, or your child. I don't know. There's something to it that is really interesting. And so I never saw the original Netflix documentary. As you well know, Candace, I'm not the most pop culturally literate person out there. Just kind of build out for our audience, though, just how widespread of a phenomenon this was and how it moved people's sentiments. I mean, you would walk away thinking you're a subject matter expert on policing and look at this poor guy, when in reality, I mean, this guy is now a convicted murderer and, you know, was allegedly wrongfully convicted in 1985. But do you think he actually was wrongfully convicted, Candace?
Yes. Any person, whether you're a person that believes he's guilty or of this particular crime with Teresa Hallback or not, will agree that he was wrongfully convicted. They actually ended up arresting the guy and put him away who actually did commit the murder. This woman who survived this horrific attack pointed to the wrong guy. It was the wrong blonde guy, kind of a similar build. And she did the media circuit after, talking about how horrible she felt that she put this man in prison for 12 years, something that he didn't do. Thing that, you know, is not really told is that he was also serving a sentence at the same time. 6 years of that 18 years that he was in prison total was something that he did do. He was very much a person that was capable of violence. We show in the first couple of episodes, you know, he was torturing animals. I don't know that the average individual grabs their house pet, douses them in gasoline and throws them into fire because they just want to have fun one night. You know, we tend to understand how a person can start with torturing animals and move on. He was in prison, or he has a married cousin. He ran her off the road, put a gun to her head and ordered her into the car. Fortunately or unfortunately, she had a small toddler in the car with her, and she begged him to just allow him to drop off her toddler. And then he had a second thought and turned around because he didn't know what to do as he was following her. So he had a whole history of violence, and when Netflix spoke about it, they diminished it and they downplayed it. And this sort of what you're really seeing, like I said, playing into early anti-police sentiments, was people having their emotions hijacked by this Netflix docuseries, showing you a man that just got out of prison for something that he actually didn't do. He's hugging his family. He's back. They sort of present him as this close-knit, wonderful family. When you watch our docuseries, you're going to understand that the family is filled with sexual deviance. There's so much pedophilia. They've pled, They pled guilty to pedophilia within their own family, but far be it from Netflix to tell you any of that. The whole concept was this dejected man who just kind of wanted to get back to his family and his family roots. And now, oh my gosh, he's being framed by the police. And what was really fascinating to me about this case and why I wanted to jump into it, Charlie, was because it wasn't divided across political lines. It wasn't like conservatives thought he was guilty and liberals thought that he wasn't. This happened in 2015, and people on both sides thought that he was plausibly innocent. which is really fascinating, to go back and even pull conservative tweets. People thought that he was plausibly innocent, which really shows you how much we've moved as a society from our reliance and belief in the mainstream narrative to where we are today, where I don't think that would be as possible following the collapse of the George Floyd narrative. But that was the beginning of trying to make criminals look like they were heroes. It really started with Making a Murderer.